get more people to eat seafood so they can live longer, happier, healthier lives. And in order to understand how to do that, we really need to understand the consumer, understand what they're dealing with, what their views towards seafood are, what the barriers, where are the opportunities, and then how do we develop. How's that? Develop programs that connect with consumers and compel them to eat more seafood. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, and then partnering with Jackie Marks from Marine Stewardship Council, also talk about the importance of sustainability and consumers' point of view about sustainability and how it impacts their purchase of seafood. Okay, what if? All right, it'll be a little awkward, but I can hold it. Okay, overall, the key takeaways from my portion of this presentation are here. The news is that Americans are actually eating more seafood, so that's great news. They know it's healthy, they know it should be part of their regular diet. So that's great news, but compared to the proteins that we're competing with, we have a much lower incidence of consumption. And I'll show you some data about that. More than three-quarters of the seafood that's eaten in the United States is imported. And right now, as everyone knows, with tariffs and a lot of other things happening within the industry, that is a challenge. So we're facing headwinds. And we need to understand what does that mean to consumers, and then how do we address and continue to drive seafood consumption. And then also seafood receives a very small fraction of the consumer mind share. The amount of money that's invested in seafood to promote consumption versus the pork board, the beef council, or even just major poultry brands like Purdue and Tyson. We're a fraction of that. So how, again, do we break through and remind people they love seafood and have them eat more of it? And so we developed about 2 years ago a campaign called Fall in Love with Seafood. It's a national seafood promotion. And it's one that we've had success with. So I'd love to share some information about that campaign, and then also talk about where do we go from here with promoting seafood and getting consumers to eat more of this delicious, healthy protein. So as I mentioned, 63% of consumers eat seafood. So we're actually seeing an increase versus 5 years ago, we're only 11%. I'm sorry, it's 11% increase. So that is great news. We've got more people eating seafood. But if you look at frequent consumers of seafood, it pales in comparison to poultry and beef and pork that have almost 2/3 or even more than 2/3 of American consumers eating them on a regular basis, which means they're eating them about twice a week. So we're making progress, but we still have a lot of competition from our other protein sources. We know why people eat seafood. They like it. It's delicious. Taste is the #1 reason by far that people eat seafood. The #2 reason is health. They know it's good for them. So we have to communicate the deliciousness of seafood and then underscore the health benefits. And again, seafood is something that consumers know needs to be part of their diet. So when we did focus groups and online surveys with current seafood consumers, occasional and frequent seafood consumers, and we asked them to agree or disagree with certain statements. 94% of the folks that we surveyed said, I know that seafood is healthy. 93% said it should be part of my diet. So if we have all of these people saying they love seafood and they know it's good for them, why aren't we able to get them to eat it more regularly? How do we maintain seafood's awareness top of mind so they're eating it at least once a week, ideally twice a week? The primary barrier is price. So if you look at these different reasons that people are not eating seafood or eating as much seafood as we'd like, price is the #1 reason, 57%. And then this is a really interesting statistic because on the right-hand side, you'll see that if all protein were the same price, so they asked consumers, if beef, chicken, pork, all the same price, what would you choose to have for dinner? And the number one choice was seafood. And so people want to eat it, they know it's good for them, but they're really concerned about the price. And it's our job to make it top of mind. I've told a few of you this anecdote, but we did focus groups with frequent seafood consumers. So these are people who eat seafood at least twice a week. And in the very beginning, we just asked them about their meal prep and shopping habits. And we asked them what they made for dinner. And they talked about pork, and they talked about chicken, and they talked about beef. And these frequent seafood consumers never mentioned seafood. Then when the moderator said, "What about seafood?" they couldn't stop talking about seafood, how they prepared it, what they served their family, new things they were trying. And so even amongst people who are eating seafood twice a week, it's not top of mind with them. And so we really do have to figure out a way to connect with them and remind them how much they love seafood. Again, over 75% of the seafood that is consumed in the United States is imported. And the protein that we're competing with does not have that challenge in terms of the new tariffs and challenges that the industry is facing. 1% of poultry, 10% or less of beef and pork are imported. But again, with seafood, 75% is imported. We're also starting to see the price of seafood increase. So we knew that the tariffs would have an impact, but we didn't know when it would hit and what the impact would be. And this is something we're just starting to see. Again, as you can see, as we're going through the year, we're suddenly seeing that the index for seafood price is increasing. And so a lot of seafood suppliers and brands, they have brought seafood in, frozen seafood, many of them, and they're just now depleting the stocks from 6 months ago, 9 months ago. So I think in Q4 is really where the rubber hits the road and we see what's going to happen in terms of seafood prices. And again, the projection is that they're going to increase. So we have consumers that are worried about the price of seafood, and now we know it's going to go even higher. So here I am being the little black rain cloud. So the rain continues. So when you look at consumers, they really are concerned about what's happening with prices. 96% are concerned about food costs. 65% are really watching what they're spending at the grocery store. And so we've got consumers that are worried about price and overall inflation and how much they're spending. And again, if you look at the top reasons that they're not eating more seafood, 4 of the 5 reasons are price related. And then we have our partners, or I should say our competition here, spending tons of money. So whether it's the Beef Council spending $9.3 million last year, the Pork Board spent 11, they're projecting to spend 15 million this year. And then you look at what we've done right now with a national seafood promotion campaign, Fall in Love with Seafood, at 850,000. And we really want to build that and have a stronger presence. And if you look at Purdue and Tyson, just those 2 brands combined spend $175 million promoting their poultry products. Consumers see about 10,000 ads a week. So the question is, actually a day, the question is, how do we break through? We've got big competition spending lots of money, and how are we going to connect with those consumers? And the Fall in Love with Seafood campaign is a program that is connecting with consumers and driving consumption. When we did focus groups and online surveys showing the creative for the campaign, which I'll show you in a minute, and hopefully some of you have seen it, 77% of the people who saw the creative said, it makes me want to eat more seafood. So we knew that we developed 7 campaigns, we put 3 into testing, and this one campaign, Fall in Love with Seafood, won hands down at driving, or at least making consumers think that they want to eat more seafood. It's a versatile campaign. It's able to showcase many, many, many different kinds of seafood. I'm going to pull this up right now, just so you guys can see the campaign if you haven't seen it or if you have, to remind you. Again, we know consumers buy seafood because it tastes good. So how do we make the seafood so delicious, so mouthwatering that when they're going through their social media or they're online on their favorite website, how do we make them stop the scroll, engage, and then click on that ad, share that ad, comment on that ad? And so first we start with showing them this delicious seafood and reminding them how much they love it. And all of the advertising that we do, we are targeting current seafood consumers. And then we have our little cheeky headlines, a little sassy, a little sexy, make it memorable. So for sushi, it's let's role play. We've got, reignite an old flame for shrimp. One of the ones that's not on here shows beautiful lobster tail, and it says, catch some tail. And so, okay, and Linda knows that anytime we come up with a new execution, if she blushes deep breath, it's a winner. Even the catch some tail execution, we had to show the board to make sure they were comfortable with it, and they were all like, go for it. And Linda was like, but it is the execution that has had the highest engagement rate. And the second one is let's role play. So we want to get people's attention. We want to remind them they love seafood and then get them to actually purchase more seafood. And we've been partnering with retailers and suppliers to execute this Fall in Love with Seafood campaign. So the campaign's been seen over 130 million times since it launched in January 2024. We partnered with 5 major retailers, H-E-B, Publix, Weis, Harris Teeter, and Hy-Vee. And we've actually executed a second campaign with H-E-B, and we'll be running our second Publix campaign in about a week and a half in October, and our third campaign with H-E-B in January. So we've had 7 campaigns executed, over 40 suppliers and brands within the industry participating in the campaign. And we've been driving an average return on investment of $4.52. And the way we calculate that is we look at the month of the campaign, they're usually a month long, and we compare the sales to the same period a year ago, and then we look at the change. So we're only calculating the incremental sales, the lift that was received versus the prior year. And then we compare that to how much did we spend. So for every dollar we invest in this campaign, it's returning $4.52 in incremental seafood sales. We're having great engagement. We've had over 200,000 consumers engage with the campaign and a very high click-through rate. So about 3.5% click-through rate. And the average in the industry is about 1.5. So we're excited about the campaign. We know that it's working. And what we're trying to do now is figure out what's the next step. How do we involve more retailers, more brands, and get seafood out there with its share of voice and drive consumption? Here are the suppliers, and I'm sure you guys know a lot of these. A lot of you guys are sitting here in this room. Thank you for your support. So we really do across the seafood realm. We've got fresh, frozen, private label, national brand, shelf stable, ready meals, sushi. Our goal is really to demonstrate to consumers how many options there are for seafood all across the store. And we do find that when a retailer includes brands from all across the store, suppliers from all across the store, the return on investment goes up by about 40%. And the campaign overall lifts the entire seafood category. And then also, I mentioned that we had a great engagement rate, again, demonstrating that people are connecting with the creative. But we were pleasantly surprised to find out that over a third of the people who are engaging with the campaign are younger consumers, millennials and Gen Z. So we've got about 33% of those clicks and likes and shares and add to carts are coming from the younger audience, which is great. And of building seafood consumption so it becomes a lifelong habit. Sustainability is obviously a key topic. how are consumers viewing sustainability? How does it impact their purchase decisions? And we know that 64% of consumers take sustainability into account when they're purchasing seafood. And you can see it's sustainability across the board in all the different ways that it's defined. And so I'm going to hand it over to Jackie Marks now to talk a little more about sustainability and consumers and how it's affecting their seafood